Hi, welcome to the module on the perfect participles and on the genitive absolute. We'll be covering Mounds chapter 30 in your textbook for this module. The perfect participle has a certain set of forms that are unique to it, and we'll be going over that in a bit. One of the first things we need to learn about the perfect participle is that while the augment is not used for non-indicative moods, the reduplication is. There is reduplication whether the mood is indicative or non-indicative. And the reason why is because the augment that we attach to tenses in the indicative mood really is a past time morpheme. I know that I've been using this word a lot, but just a reminder that morpheme is a grammatical unit. And so the augment is a past time morpheme, a past time grammatical unit, whose meaning is something is past time. Whereas reduplication doesn't really have to do with the time of the action. Reduplication has to do with the kind of the action, that something happens prior to the time of the person, and the effect, so that's the kind of action, the effect of this past time event reaches and is still valid for the person who's either writing the text or reading the text. So the reduplication has to do with kind of action, and therefore it retains its use even in the non-indicative forms. So to form the perfect active participle, we have to reduplicate the stem. And again, we're going to use luo as a paradigmatic verb. So the stem is lu from luo. And so we duplicate. We have the stem, lu. And the tense formative for the perfect active participle is caught for the masculine and neuter forms, and it's quia for the feminine forms. We're doing the masculine form first. So we're using caught, and then we're using the third declension noun ending. So we're supposed to add a sigma. And what happens is that when you add a sigma, the tau drops, and this short vowel, this omicron, doesn't like the fact that tau drops, and so it compensates by going long. It turns into omega. So the final form looks like this: lelukos. Lelukos. As any other participle, the genitive singular form is where you're going to see the stem that you use for the whole paradigm. So you have reduplication, you have lu, you have caught, and the third declension genitive singular masculine ending is os. So lelukos is the genitive singular for the perfect participle. The dative singular for the perfect participle is lelukati. The accusative singular for the perfect participle is lelukata. The nominative plurals is lelukates. The genitive plural is lelukaton. The dative plural is lelukot. Add the scene, and you'll have the same thing that happened as in the nominative singular. The tau drops, and then the final form looks like this: lelukosi or sin, and the accusative plural is lelu. And those are the forms. So let's say the perfect active participle for the masculine forms. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Lelukos, lelukatas, lelukati, lelukata, lelukates, lelukaton, lelukosin, lelukatas. Let's go over the neuter forms. We have the reduplication, we have the stem, we have the perfect participle tense morpheme, caught. You add nothing to it, and what happens is that the tau drops, and we're not exactly sure why, but in place of the tau, we have the sigma, and what happens is that the omicron stays short so that it can be distinguished from the masculine form. So the final form looks like this: lelu cos. So we have the reduplication, we have the stem, we have the tense formative for the perfect participle, and then the genitive singular form is os. So lelukatos is the genitive singular form for the neuters. Lelukati is the dative singular, and lelukos again, because the accusative and nominative singulars are the same, is for the accusative singular. The nominative plural for the neuters is lelukata with the alpha. Then it's lelukatone for the genitive plurals. Lelukosi or sin for the dative plural, for the same reasons why we had this form for the masculine dative plural. And then the accusative plural is lelukata. So let's say these forms. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Lelukos, lelukatos, lelukati, lelukos, lelukata, lelukatone, lelukosin, lelukata. Now let's go over the feminine forms. So remember, for the feminine forms, we're using the first declension noun endings, and we begin with the reduplication again, the stem, lu, and then a different tense formative for the feminines. It's quia, qui, ah. Now notice that the stem ends with this iota, and because it ends with an iota, and its case endings will follow the epsilon iota rho first declension endings. So we have leluquia, the genitive singular is leluquias, the dative singular is leluqui iota subscript. The accusative singular is lelu qui on. The nominative plural is lelu qui I. The genitive plural is lelu qui on. The dative plural is lelu qui ice, and the accusative plural is lelu qui os. And those are the forms for the masculine, the feminine, and the neuter perfect active participle using lu as our paradigm. So we used, for example, luo, which is the easiest verb we could use for any paradigm. But I just wanted to make a quick note that, like the other participles and like any form, if you the stem that you use for any given verb is the stem that you see in the principal parts. This is especially important for irregular verbs or verbs that undergo a stem change depending on the tense. So if I want to form the perfect participle, for example, sozo, which is I am saving, I would look at the stem, the principal part for the perfect active indicative, and what I'll notice is it's sezoka. We've noticed some changes here. That the sezoka does not have an iota subscript as part of its stem. It has dropped the dental, and so if the first person perfect active indicative, the principal part for the perfect active indicative, is sezoka, where the stem says so, and the ka here is the suffix you attach, then the perfect active participle, and I'll just use the genitive form here, is going to be sezo. So it has the reduplication, it has the stem, but instead of ka, which makes it the indicative mood, I want to use the participle endings, and so I add katas to it. And so this is the form that I would use for the perfect active participle. The form down here is the middle passive, but I won't go over that until we actually show the middle passive paradigm. And then here's some other examples. So ginomai, for example, it uses a second perfect form. So if you memorize as part of your principal parts, as part of vocabulary, that the perfect active indicative principal part is gegana. This is the base. And so here is the stem gegan, where ge here is reduplication, gon is going to be your stem, and then the second perfect drops the kappa, so that's your indicative mood. It would follow the stem of the principal part. So you have the ge, the reduplication, you have gon, and just like, because the perfect indicative uses the second perfect endings, therefore the kappa drops, and these are the second perfect endings for the participle. It just drops the kappa, just like the indicative mood drops the kappa for its second perfect. And the genitive singular masculine perfect participle form is gigantos. And then if we have an irregular verb like gnosko, where eginoka is the perfect form, where this epsilon here, if you remember your pre-midterm material, that this is not an augment. This epsilon functions as reduplication. You have the same reduplication here. You have the same stem, but instead of ka, you have katos to make it a participle. So the rule is, for any form, it doesn't matter what mood, go to the principal part for a particular tense, see the stem. If it's a verb like luo, then you don't have to worry about anything. The stem for any principal part is going to be lu all the way through. But if it's an irregular verb, if it's a verb that is generally regular but might have one change for one of its tenses, it just does something weird for a particular tense. If it's an irregular verb with more than one verbal root, you're going to have to go to the principal part, go to the tense that you're trying to form, and then instead of the indicative endings, if you're trying to form the participle, use the participle endings, and that's how you would get the perfect participle.